Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tapping into Culture, a series about beer and culture brought to you by Sixpoint and VinePair. In today's episode, we're talking about Beers of Summer 2021. And this week, Max is back. First of all, welcome back. Missed you last episode. And we are joined this week by our special guest, Mandy Naglich. And Mandy is our homebrew columnist at VinePair. You can check out all her articles under the BIY column, which stands for Brew It Yourself. And you may also know her from her very successful and beautiful Instagram persona and website, Beers With Mandy, which is focused on beer education and lots of interesting things. So I know we don't usually do this, Max, but Sixpoint was kind enough to send over Sixpoint's summer wheat beer, Apollo, and I immediately cracked it open, which you may already know from my Instagram story. But yeah, this was very exciting for me. It's like we're recording on a gloomy day in May, but it's still hot, it's muggy, and to me, wheat beer is such an awesome summer style that I feel like people know about and they know it's around. It's at beer halls, it's at German beer gardens, but we're not really, covering it as a trend very often because it's such a traditional style. So Max, why don't you tell us a little bit about Apollo, and then I will flood you with questions, Mandy.
And cheers. Awesome. Yeah, cheers. This is so fun.
Yeah, cheers, of course. So Apollo this is an old school beer. Sixpoint used to brew this beer as a summer seasonal for a long time. It hasn't been around for at least 5 years now, and it's one of those beers that we were always getting requests from fans to bring back. When are we going to see Apollo again? When are we going to see Apollo again? When are we going to see Apollo again? And we really like to listen to our fans, especially when they want us to bring back an old beer. So this was the year. Here comes Apollo again. And in its most classic sense, this is a German Crystalweizen, which is basically a German Hefeweizen, but no cloudiness here. This is a really nice clarity to it. So you get a lot of those banana esters. It has a little bit of a clove phenol character, a lot of that, sweet wheat malt character. And it's just a really approachable, easy drinking beer. This is sort of what I think of as one of, a handful of styles, but a really good summer style. Like you said, very refreshing, very easy to drink. You don't have to be a craft beer nut to get into this style of beer. It sort of has something for most people that like beer.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you see it, it looks like it's going to be an American wheat, and then you smell it and it's like totally that German wheat character. It's beautiful. Comes out nice and clear for summer.
So Mandy, you just brought up a really good point, which is an American wheat beer versus a German wheat beer. Could you speak a little bit about the different types of German beer styles?
Yeah, I mean, I think Max covered it really well. So when you first pour a German wheat beer, you'd expect it to have that like cloudy, hazy look that we kind of expect in those tall German wheat beer glasses. But as far as German wheat ale styles, they're going to be very yeast forward on the aroma and flavor. So not a ton going on for the hops in this. I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know if you actually know this, Max, but like less than 15 IBU probably.
Yeah, right around there, 10 to 15.
Yeah. So just like a little balancing bitterness to not make it overpowering on the malt for this one. Then there's a more heavy alcohol style of German wheat. That's going to be your Weizenbach. So that'll have a lot of similar flavors. Again, will probably be a little hazier and can be darker in color, but will have that like banana clove that Max was describing. But then the other side of German wheat classic styles or just German classic styles are going to be like those really clean malt forward lagers. So like your Munich Dunkel, which is that kind of like dark, toasty, nice lager, your Pilsners, your Helles, really showcasing beautiful German malt, which they, are so careful to make really well and really with an artisanal hand. So they want to showcase those bready flavors or toasty flavors. And then on the opposite side of this, very yeast forward, those don't have a lot of impact from yeast. It's going to be a really clean lager profile. So both sides of the coin, they're actually great to drink for summer. This is a little light and a little fruitier and sweeter, which is great in summer. And then like a really crisp lager is like never going to weigh you down if you're sipping it outside at a baseball game or something. So that's kind of the two basic categories, I guess, of classic German styles.
Absolutely. And so would an American wheat beer, would you say, be a little hazier, a little hoppier? Like what makes it
So an American wheat would be clear like this, probably. It's going to be using wheat malt instead of like flaked wheat or flaked oats, which are usually would give you more of that protein haze. But it's not going to have that banana clove character. It'll just be really nice and clean and probably a little bit hop forward. Not like IPA, but it might have some like nice floral hops going on, maybe a little touch of citrus. But it will look like this, but it won't have any of this like banana clove kind of leaning in the sweetness as far as aroma, but this definitely doesn't finish sweet. It's really nice and light. So
it is,
like you said, yeah, it's great.
This is also like a departure from most, or at least many, Sixpoint beers. I was like half expecting to open this up and be like, did they just make their wheat beer 9% ABV? It's like 5.2 or something. 5.2. Yeah, which is like so great.
It's
love that.
It's not slapping you in the face with hops. Who is this Sixpoint? Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Are you? And like, good to see you again.
Yeah, no, we got the delivery like minutes before this started, so I didn't even look at, but it does say 13 IBU on here. So,
oh my God, Mandy, nailed it.
5.2, yeah, and it definitely doesn't drink hot at all. It's 5.2 is like, substantial summer ABV, but
yeah,
really nice and balanced.
So I'm glad you both liked it.
Yeah, I know, I'm like a little bit maybe too excited about this beer right now. I just feel like it's not really the style that gets a lot of attention or Untapped check-ins or media attention. It's like, it's good to see this coming back from Sixpoint and from other breweries as well. And Max, what do you think it is about Apollo that had people, you mentioned when we chatted earlier that fans of the brand have been like requesting this one to come back. Mm-hmm. And that's like, despite the fact that Sixpoint has broadened its portfolio to have all these hazy IPAs, sour IPAs, you're doing all sorts of things that are more like on trend. Mm-hmm. So what do you think it is about Apollo that like still stuck in the back of people's minds?
I think part of it really has to be just that like super approachable nature of this beer.
Yeah.
I think Sixpoint, we always try and focus on balance and think about, the overall cohesiveness of a beer when we're coming up with a recipe and formulating it and piloting it and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, some of those on-trend beers aren't as approachable for people that are just getting into craft beer. Or maybe you've been in craft beer for a while and you just, your sweet spot is those easy drinking lagers, or, German wheat beer styles like this. Something that it's a nice flavor profile to it without being like super in your face with bitterness or super in your face with, even if it's hop aromas and flavors, that's not for everyone. And we recognize that. And that's cool too.
Yeah, this is definitely a nice like entry style too for getting into yeast forward flavors. It's not, so many beers, like we said, are focused on the hops. And this is like a nice way to get into those like banana flavors. If you're going to go and have like crazy Belgian flavors or like sour beers that are really popular, I think this is a nice way to like kind of dip your toe in and see what beer can be that is more yeast forward, and then kind of like, pump up to those more, more intense yeast flavors than this. This is just like a little softer.
Yes. Talk to us more about yeast flavors, Mandy, because this is another one of those like not really covered enough, not talked about enough. And I think it's your forte in your own home brewing. And, there's just so much to unlock there that, we don't really talk about as much as hops or maybe even malt. So what are could you describe some of the different ways that yeast can be expressive and like some of the maybe summer friendly flavors that can result?
Yeah, I think that, a great point about like when brewers are putting together their recipe, right? They're going to select their hops for whatever flavors they're going to try to get out of them. Same with their malt. And then yeast is also a factor like that. A lot of American yeasts are going to be very clean. Like an American ale yeast is pretty much, if you get anything, it's like a little flavor of green apple, maybe. That's pretty much all that's going to come off of it. But yeast strains from other places like Germany or like Belgium, or even like London, will create more flavors or more flavor active compounds from fermentation. So when they're fermenting that yeast or that malt bill, they will produce things like esters and phenols, which Max mentioned earlier, which are kind of generally known as like a fruit category for esters. So it can be things like apples, pears, lemon, banana in this case. And then there's the phenols, which are kind of seen as more of like a spice forward character when they're positive. So when you have the good phenols, when the yeast are behaving and doing what the brewer wants, they'll do things like clove, allspice, cinnamon, white pepper is a really common phenol that is a favorable phenol. Of course, like any ingredient, like if you get a bad thing of hops and it smells like cheese in your beer, like if yeast goes wild or the brewer's not in control, phenols can be Band-Aid and esters can be nail polish. But someone like a really talented brewer at Sixpoint can control that they're getting Vanna and clove and they're not going to go all the way toward Band-Aid or anything like that.
Right.
So yeah.
I just like animated for a second because on a previous episode we were talking about different types of sour beer, and I had mentioned that I have an issue with kettle sours sometimes, like quick soured, and which are a lot of times summer styles, because I get this like rubbery note, like Band-Aid. So it does exist. Not crazy.
Yeah, and that I mean is also a fermentation character from bacteria as well. So once you introduce bacteria, that's even harder to control for a brewer that doesn't, isn't on top of their yeast strains and bacteria. And then another thing that people don't think about that yeast really creates as a flavor is different alcohols as well. Like depending on the fermentation temperature, it can create alcohols that do have a little bit more of a sense, like more of a honey forward or rose forward aroma that people kind of forget about when you're thinking of your flavor. And it's actually really important. And I think, this summer, a lot of people are talking about non-alcoholic beer. And that's often like the thing you can't put your finger on that can be missing. That you're like, I don't know why, it just doesn't quite taste like beer. And sometimes it is that like hint of like rose or honey or just sweetness from alcohol that you don't realize is so important to your flavor.
That is super interesting. I have never thought about that before. Like the alcohol itself contributing flavor. Yeah. Wow. But this one, I mean, it's just a super simple, sessionable, like you said, you get those delicate notes of the banana and clove and all of that. What are some other summer styles, or what are some other ways to drink a wheat beer? Like, would you recommend Max or Mandy serving this with an orange slice or with a certain snack?
I mean, I think people look down on radlers, and that's like when you mix a wheat beer with like a lemonade. But that's totally traditional in Germany. Like it's totally part of beer culture. They actually will carbonate lemonade to mix with the beer, so you're not getting a flat radler. But I think that's something fun. And I mean, this is 5.5 or 5.2, we said %. So it's not too high, but if we're going to be drinking them for 4 hours out at your kid's baseball game or something, like maybe you want to mix them with a little lemonade and, keep that going for longer. But yeah, the one thing to think about when you're making a radler is the mouthfeel. If you're going to use like flat lemonade, it will kind of flatten out the mouthfeel of your beer. But I think that's kind of looked down upon. And I'm like, that's totally part of your culture. Yeah.
Love radlers, love shandies. Is that the distinction? Radler would be more traditionally a wheat beer. A shandy is usually a lager. Like, what is the difference?
I actually
don't know. Episode 7 side note.
Yeah.
Difference between shandy and radler.
Yeah. I don't know actually if there's the distinction on those.
I don't know the answer to that question either.
That's so funny. 2 advanced Cicerone and we don't know.
That
shandy making is not a huge part of the Cicerone program, but maybe we
can be. I do love that though.
Going back to your original question, like I personally would not put an orange slice on this beer, but if someone wants to do that, I'm not here to judge either. There's no wrong way to drink a beer. If that's what you enjoy, then fruit your beer. Go right ahead.
For sure. I actually tested it out because I happened to be eating an orange when this was delivered, and it didn't really work for me. I think it sort of took away, the orange kind of took away from the sweetness of the beer. Like it kind of knocked out that pleasant, whether it was from the malts or perhaps partially the yeast. I feel like it stripped it of that fruitiness a little bit, and I prefer it on its own, but lemonade sounds pretty good.
I think typically when I think of an orange slice in a beer, also a wheat beer, but I would think more of a Belgian wit beer style.
Yeah.
And I think that orangey citrus would have a little bit more crossover with the lemony citrus notes that you would find in a wit beer that might be absent in a German Hefeweizen or Crystal Martin.
Yeah. In that case, they can kind of like accentuate, because they also usually have coriander and sometimes also orange peel in them. And that can kind of like pull those notes out. So it's kind of a nice, take a sip without your orange, then bite your orange and try it again and see what it changes. But like this with a lemon slice, I could totally get down with.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So what are either of you thinking will be the trends of this summer in the beer world? Do you think we're going to see more wheat beers, more sessionable crystal Weissens like these, or what are your thoughts?
Mandy, you want to go first?
You can go first.
So I think there's a couple things. I mean, I think, the approachability, the drinkability factor has to be there. It seems like on trend right now, adding fruit to beers is, really trendy. And I think that's going to continue. Maybe in the summertime, a little bit less of the, puree in a glass type feeling and a little bit more of the like fruit as a nice back note, adding some refreshing notes and some complexity. I was down in Virginia for work all last week, and I talked to a couple of bar buyers down there and some other brewers and distributor folks. And in that scene specifically, they seemed really excited about like saisons for summertime. And I love a great saison anytime, and so I'm on board with that trend too.
Absolutely.
And then also, if you want something more malt forward, like I'm always down for a good Schwarzbier or, something that has a little bit of like malt toastiness, another German style, but still really light and easy drinking. I'm not sure if Schwarzbier is on trend yet, but I'm going to cross my fingers and keep hoping.
I mean, we're trying, right? I've definitely written in that listicle.
Sometimes these wish lists have to be aspirational.
Yep.
Yeah, right. No, and I think to like build on that, I think what we might see this summer, and I will admit my drinking styles typically are not on trends. So Max is definitely more tapped into that than I am. But I think kind of a dry finish in beers. I think we've had a lot of like over the last year leading up in these like milkshake styles, like IPAs and things like that with a fuller palate. And I have noticed this summer things moving toward things that are finishing like with a really low gravity. So basically that light body, that almost like drying sensation after you take a sip. So it's not going to feel so heavy, not so lactose forward. And I have seen a few cool lagers and things using alternate fermentables. To your point about the Schwarzbier, there's a black rice lager from Anderson Valley that I think is super interesting. And it actually has the flavor of black rice, but it's like super light. And I think using things like that, I saw a jasmine rice beer recently. Using those things to keep that really light body, but add interest in a different way, I think is something that might start popping up more.
I love that black rice lager from Anderson Valley. That actually was one of our VinePair's top 50 beers of, I believe it was 2020, because it was like one of my standbys in COVID times, because it's just a delicious beer, but super light and easy to drink.
Yeah, and kind of different.
Even though it's a dark beer. Yeah.
I don't think I've tried that one. I'll have to track that down.
Oh my God, you must. I don't know why, like when you get the right dark beer or, black lager or something that's that you meet the right one, it's just like, it's a love that you can't let go.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people are hesitant when they're so used to like a stout that's like super roast forward and like kind of heavy and like maybe even full in the palate.
Right.
But not even stouts have to be like that, but definitely dark lagers don't have to be like that. They can have that like kiss of roast that's like really nice and light and easy drinking. So maybe that's what we'll go for summer 2021. Don't be afraid of the dark beers.
Okay. Dark beers in the summer. I like that. I'm always down.
What about you, Kat? Have you seen any trends that you're as on the pulse as anyone. What do you think is coming? I
would agree with fruit beers, fruited sours, quick sours. That's been happening for many summers, but I think it's still happening more and more, just like simple, kettle soured with berries or citrus, or if you're lucky and hit a small brewery, you get the passion fruit orange guava. That's like the trendiest trio of fruits. I actually can't drink those because I'm allergic to a lot of fruit. So It's like my least favorite trend. But those tend to be super popular. Hard seltzer, not a beer, but that's everything and everywhere. It's like what I'm seeing people carrying cases of down the street in Manhattan, in Brooklyn. And I mean, there really are a lot more craft options, including from Sixpoint now.
Including a passion fruit orange guava one.
Yeah. Oh my God!
Oh, wow.
You hit it!
Yeah, there we go. There's the trend.
Hit
that's
that
one
pog.
of our 4 flavors that we're launching with, for sure.
Wow. Wait, it's a pog seltzer.
There you go.
Look at this. Look at this.
Yeah. We did our research.
Yeah, things like, I think it's like there are conceptual trends too, like tiki or tropical, like using those tropical fruit flavors, whether it's with the fruit itself or whether you're kind of coaxing those things out of hops in something like a session IPA, although no one's really calling them that anymore. There's a lot of like low cal IPAs out there. I just had one recently from Great Divide it's called Crushworthy. And it's like a low calorie IPA with orange flavor. And it's just like so easy, like so tasty. It reminds me of this, like this wheat too. It's actually made with wheat. And it's just like a very, like a soft, boat beer, picnic beer, easy drinking. But that's what we're really seeing is, fruits and seltzers.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, Mandy.
No, I was just going to tack on about the seltzers. I've noticed a lot more breweries doing the gluten reduced thing. And I think that kind of comes up because seltzers, that's one of the benefits of them. So using like Brewers Clarex or Clarity Firm to cut down on the gluten, and they're not allowed to say gluten-free, but gluten reduced. I've noticed a lot of those popping up around too.
Or like crafted to remove gluten.
Yeah.
I think there is actually a logo now, like that makes it official.
Yeah.
That you can look for.
I think there's a difference in the, like your lab testing, if it's crafted to remove gluten or gluten reduced. I think gluten reduced actually means a certain number or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's like
so it's like a lot of
PPI
testing they have to do to keep that on the label. So it's an undertaking. But
yeah, and I was just going to reference back to what you were just saying, Kat, about like the occasions that people drink beer when it's hot outside, when it's summertime. I think play into the styles that work best. And like you said, if you're going to be on a boat, if you're going to be on the beach, if you're going to be in the park throwing a frisbee around with your friends, or just playing with your dog all day, you can't drink 8% alcohol beers, consecutively and have it end up being
difficult.
A good day. I mean, it could be a good day, but it's going to be a really rough next day.
Yeah. It's going to be a short day.
So I think, having some of those lower alcohol options is like essential to a good seasonal beer for summer.
For sure. I am all about the low ABV. I don't care about calories, but I do care about just sessionability. And that's like the first thing I look for on a beer menu is what's low ABV, and like then I'll choose from there. That's my life these days.
But I feel like when it's low ABV, I still want it to have some kind of like flavor going on. I don't want it to totally be just like a light lager that's just
just made
kind
to
of
be low,
flavorless. Yeah, exactly.
Happens to be low. Yeah.
Right. It still has flavor even if it's lower ABV.
I feel that. Well, so that's what we've got for summer then. We've got wheat beers, we've got some fruited stuff. Maybe we'll be drinking some Schwartz beers and black rice
Hopefully some
lagers.
Saisons in there.
Summer Saisons, like
there we go.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'll be drinking some Schwartz beers. Hopefully the people at home will be too.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for joining. Unless there's anything else you want to shout out for summer, I think this is about time to finish our Apollos.
Yeah, there we go. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to summer.
Cheers to summer.